Hello and welcome to this daily news analysis episode. And today, like always, we are going to cover some very interesting topics that have come in the Hindu and Indian Express today. So, the first topic that we are going to discuss today is DRDO conducts key test for hypersonic missile program that came in the Hindu. It also featured in the Indian Express, very important from prelims perspective, very important, just stay tuned. It should not be your agency versus my police. So recently with ED raids in West Bengal, this article has featured in the Indian Express. A similar article has come in the Hindu also. So in this article we will understand the the roles, powers, functions of the enforcement directorate and some of the key concerns related to federalism with respect to the central investigative agencies. The third topic that we are going to discuss came in the Indian Express explained section, that is beyond economy, the Iran stir reflects rage against regime. So the recent rising protest in the Iran, so they have from December 28 till now it has intensified, and we are going to look at this topic both from a geopolitical perspective and very important from UPSC's perspective, that is mapping. So this is a very important topic both from a geopolitical perspective and mapping in UPSC prelims, right. In the big picture in Indian Express, return of Buddha's relics, it featured today a very important article about the Piprahwa relics that were sourced back. It was supposed to be auctioned in the Hong Kong, and India got back those relics. So we are going to look at the significance from an art and culture perspective, and a very important article regarding Somaliland that is no longer a diplomatic endnote that featured in the Hindu. Very important article which brings back to focus the one China policy and the recent tension that is happening in the Horn of Africa. So these important articles are we are going to cover in today's DNA session. So coming to the first topic today, so what is the news about? So here we see that DRDO conducts key test for hypersonic missile program. So the Hyderabad, the DRDO that is a Defense Research and Development Laboratory that is located in Hyderabad, it successfully has completed a test for the hypersonic missile regime, and the extended duration ground test was conducted using actively cooled scramjet full scale combustor, right, and an overall run time that was achieved was of 12 minutes. Now it is very significant for India's hypersonic missile regime. So far we have achieved supersonic successfully, but we are yet to stabilize the technology related to hypersonic. And as we are seeing with rising threats of China, the arms race that is happening between US and Russia, and the kind of geopolitical tensions that are going around, this is a very key development. So the test was conducted at the Scramjet Connect Pipe test facility that is in Hyderabad. Now in this news, what is important is from a UPSC prelims perspective, if you look back to the PYQs, you will find that UPSC has on many occasions in science and technology asked question on scramjet, ramjet, etc., etc. So this becomes very important from that perspective, but we are going to cover it in a little detailed. So first, jet engines. What is a core concept of a jet engine? So jet engine basically is a internal combustion engine, right. So we have an internal combustion engine. It produces thrust by expelling high velocity exhaust gases. It uses the atmospheric air. So what is the principle behind a jet engine? So the first stage is compression. So outside air is sucked in, it is compressed to create more pressure, and then we have combustion. That outside air, it mixes with the fuel and creates an exhaust, right. The third principle is exhaust. It creates a thrust of exhaust that creates a pressure, and because of that pressure the engine moves, right. So that is a basic principle behind the jet engine. Now coming to the various types of jet engines, so far from a very static perspective that you should be knowing. Not all of them are important from UPSC perspective, but just to have a comprehensive coverage of this topic. So first in the list is turbojet. So what is a turbojet engine? So basically it is one of the oldest and the basic type of jet engines, and in a turbojet engine it compresses air through a turbine and then burns the fuel in the combustion chamber, right. So it's a very basic type of engine where the compression of air is happening through a turbine and it burns the fuel in the combustion chamber. So the thrust generated in this process, it boosts the aircraft forward, right. Now the second type of engine is the turbofan. So turbofan basically it is found in commercial aircrafts, right. So if before understanding turbofan, let us just understand turboprop, because turbofan is a combination of both. So the turboprop, it uses a gas turbine to power the propeller. So in turboprop we have a propeller, right, and here in this engine what happens, it uses a gas turbine to power the propeller, and it is basically used in very smaller aircrafts which require low speed and low altitude. So unlike the turbo jets that we studied above, it generates, this turboprop, it generates thrust using a propeller mechanism. Now coming to this turbofan, it is commonly found in commercial aircrafts. It is very common in commercial aircrafts, right, and it is fusion of both turbojet and turboprop. So it is basically a fusion of turbojet plus turboprop. So that is what you need to remember from a prelims perspective. So the underlying mechanism is basically that a portion of air is diverted in the from the combustion chamber towards the engine, which creates additional thrust in this turbofan mechanism. Then we have what we know as ramjet, scramjet. Pulse jet is not very important. The pulse jet it is one of the most basic jet engine, and it is also one of the most efficient of all of the above listed, right. It has no moving parts. It basically generates thrust through a pulsating mechanism, right. And basically this pulse jet, it is used in some rockets and model aircraft, not very important from prelims perspective. We are going to cover ramjet and scramjet in details in this particular discussion. So let us move towards ramjet. So ramjet introduces the supersonic regime. What are the key features of ramjet? So here in ramjet, no compressor or turbine is required. So in all the engines that we are seeing so far, we require a compressor or a turbine which will produce additional thrust, right. In ramjet, we do not require an additional compressor or turbine. It uses the forward motion of the engine to suck in air, which is then mixed with the combustion fuel, and then the exhaust is generated. So compression is achieved by forward motion of the aircraft. So that you need to remember, right. So basically, since the compression is moved by forward achieved by forward motion of the aircraft, there are no moving parts. It is having a very simpler design, right. And here the combustion occurs at a very subsonic speed. So that is what you have to remember from a prelims perspective, and operates efficiently at the speed of 3 to 6 Mach. That is the 1 Mach is basically the speed of sound, right. So that is the operating efficiency of a ramjet. Now what are the advantages of ramjet? It is very lightweight and compact, right, because it does not require a compressor or a turbine, right. It is efficient at high supersonic speeds. So we are able to achieve high supersonic speeds using a ramjet, and mechanically the design is very simple. So those are the potential advantages of a ramjet engine. Now what are the disadvantages of ramjet? Cannot operate at low speeds, right. So we will never be able to use ramjet at takeoff. Always remember this. Since it cannot operate at low speeds, so it is very inefficient when we are talking about takeoff of an aircraft where we need massive acceleration, right. needs external booster to reach supersonic speed. Now, this is also one of the technically disadvantageous aspects of ramjet engine. So, they are very inefficient at lower speeds, and they require large intakes to ensure efficient operation, right. They are very inefficient, just as I explained, they are very inefficient at lower speeds, and therefore they would require large intakes of air to ensure efficient operation, and also it requires considerable amount of fuel compared to the traditional turbojets, which are often, because of which it is very often considered very expensive to operate. Now, along with that, since it requires massive suction of air at the acceleration time, so what basically happens that it requires an external booster to reach supersonic speed. So, that is one of the technical I would say demerits of the ramjet engine. Next we move to the scramjet engine. So, what are the key features? It is basically an upgraded version of ramjet. Now, combustion, unlike the ramjet, here the combustion occurs in supersonic airflow, right. So, in ramjet the air that is sucked in, the combustion occurs at subsonic levels, but here we are able to achieve that combustion at a supersonic airflow, and therefore it works at Mach 5+, that is hypersonic regime, right. More than 5 Mach is basically the hypersonic regime, and because of this it creates extremely high thermal stress and needs active cooling. So, if you go back to the news and understand, so that is what the active cooling was being referred in this particular news, right. And it also, like ramjet, it has no moving parts. The forward motion of the engine basically sucks in the air, and then that is mixed with the fuel that we are talking about. Here we use liquid hydrogen and we use liquid oxygen as an oxidizer, right. So, liquid hydrogen along with liquid oxygen as an oxidizer is basically the fuel, and because of the forward motion of the turbine, the engine, basically it sucks in air at supersonic airflow speeds, and that is why it is able to achieve a hypersonic speed. Now, what are the potential advantages of scramjet? So, enables hypersonic speeds, that is definitely going to be your first advantage, because you are able to break that barrier of 5 Mach. It has very high fuel efficiency. It is definitely very ideal for advanced weapon systems that are hypersonic cruise missiles, etc. Now, let us look at some of the potential disadvantages. So, the technology is extremely complex, no doubt about it. So, just now we discussed that it is going to produce extremely high thermal stress, and therefore it needs active cooling. So, the technology that we are discussing is extremely complex in nature, needs very high initial speed. So, there is a similar challenge that we require a booster for initial thrust. Thermal management becomes very difficult, and the technology is very expensive and difficult to control, because some amount of thrust compared to the traditional engines and the ramjet, in scramjet regime some amount of thrust is lost, right. So, that is why it becomes very difficult to control. Now, the link to the current news, the 12-minute test proves India can manage sustained supersonic combustion and heat. That is the biggest scramjet challenge. So, what is this scramjet challenge? Let us look forward. Active cooling, why it matters? Because temperatures in this hypersonic basically technology, the temperatures exceed 1000 to 2000 degrees Celsius. There is friction, there is compression heating, right. Because of that, we require active cooling system. So, what is active cooling? Fuel is basically circulated along the engine walls, and this absorbs the heat before combustion. So, it basically prevents the structural failure and combustor burn through, right. So, that is what active cooling is required for. Now, why this is important for India? Strategic and defense significance, because hypersonic weapons matter because they are very extremely fast, and therefore the reaction time is very short, right. fast speed, reaction time is very short, and that basically increases our deterrence, right. They can fly low. Radar evasion is a very significant thing that we can achieve using the hypersonic system, and they can maneuver. They are hard to intercept, right. So these are the key advantages of hypersonic weapons system. That is why India is really upping the ante and its game. So it is important for very credible deterrence, since we are surrounded by hostile neighbors like Pakistan, China, right. And there is the current geopolitical system, the way it is going. India also needs to strengthen its defense credibility. Now it is also important in context to China's Dongfeng 17. China has already proven this hypersonic missile system, that is the Dongfeng 17, and US-Russia hypersonic arms race is going on, right. Now let us look at some of the scramjet engine and how they are a central piece to many of the high-end applications in defense, particularly the hypersonic cruise missiles and the hypersonic glide vehicles, right. So many countries have successfully developed hypersonic cruise missiles, examples being Russia's the Zircon missile and China's Dongfeng 17, 27, etc. HGVs, the glide vehicles, they basically use scramjet engines after achieving supersonic speed to attain the hypersonic speed of the missile. For example, the China's HGV Dongfeng ZF, Russia's hypersonic glide vehicle, the Avangard, it can also have you operate at a speed of up to 20 Mach. So these are some of the very important developments that are happening globally, and this is why it is very important for India to also master this technology. So just be updated with this news. It can probably come in your prelims, very important from a prelims perspective. Let us move to the next topic. Okay, so moving on to the second piece, it featured in the Indian Express today. So the article was titled, "It should not be your agency versus my police," right, because law and order, the police comes under the state domain, whereas the investigative agencies like CBI, AD, etc. are coming under the union's prerogative, right. So here in this article, again the concerns of federalism. India has a quasi-federal structure where of late the accusation has been that the union government is using its investigative agencies to target opposition ruled states, right. So here we are not going into those nitty-gritties from a very mains perspective. Why this article is very important from a prelims perspective, because ED, CBI, etc. as an institution have been in news for quite some time now. So let us understand what is the significance of this article, but before that a very short summary. So this article analyzes the recurring confrontation between the government and the central investigative agencies like CBI, Enforcement Directorate, right. So while acknowledging the concerns that this selective targeting brings of opposition leaders by central agencies, that is a focus of this article, but we are going to analyze it a little differently from a prelims and static and current perspective. Now what is the background of the issue? Let us cover the background of the issue. So there has been a long standing friction between West Bengal government and central agencies like CBI, ED. What are the key flashpoints that has happened? This is just for your context, not important for prelims. So in 2019 CBI Kolkata police standoff happened with regard to the Sharda and the Rose Valley scams. Now in the Sandesh Khali incident, again attack on ED officials happened, and this recent ED raids were related to the IPAC, the Indian Political Action Committee, and that is what flared up the street fight in West Bengal, right. Now coming to the prelims important core concept here. So Enforcement Directorate, that is something that you should be very much aware with respect to your prelims exam this year. So what is Enforcement Directorate? It is basically a specialized financial investigating agency, and it comes under the Department of Revenue, Ministry of Finance. It is headquartered at New Delhi, and it is headed by the Director of Enforcement. What are the origins of the ED? So on 1st of May 1956, an enforcement unit was formed in the Department of Economic Affairs, right. It is very important because sometimes with respect to CBI, UPSC has asked at least one of the statements which was very historical in nature. So this on May 1, 1956, this enforcement unit was formed in the Department of Economic Affairs for basically handling the exchange control laws. So violation under the Foreign Exchange Regulation Act of 1947. Now if we come back to the present day, this Foreign Exchange Regulation Act of 1947 has completely changed. We have moved to a newer law. So in 1957, what happened, this unit was renamed as Enforcement Directorate, and the mandate of this Enforcement Directorate is that it has been given the task of enforcing the provisions of two special fiscal laws, that is the Foreign Exchange Management Act. So here it was FERA, Foreign Exchange Regulation Act. Now we have moved on to the Foreign Exchange Management Act of 1999, that is the FEMA, and also the government brought the Prevention of Money Laundering Act in 2002, so PMLA. So these are the two special laws ED is the custodian of, and basically draws its powers from these two laws, right. So let us move further. So what are the powers of ED under PMLA? Powers under FEMA are not that important, I am not saying it is important, but under PMLA is something that UPSC has focused in PYQs on couple of occasions. So ED carries out under the PMLA, we are discussing the powers under the PMLA. So the Enforcement Directorate, it carries out search and seizure. In fact, most of the raids that you will find in India that the ED is carrying, it is under the PMLA, right. So the ED carries out search and seizure, that is the money, documents, etc. After it has decided that money has been laundered in any particular incident, if it has decided, it will carry out search and seizure, and on the basis of that the authorities will decide if the arrest is needed or not, right. The ED can also directly carry out search and seizure without calling the person for questioning. So it is not mandatory that first they will call the person for questioning, and then after getting convinced they will go on to carry search and seizure. So it is not necessary to summon the person first and then start with search and seizure process. If the person is arrested, the ED gets 60 days to file the prosecution complaint, that is basically the charge sheet. The punishment under PMLA does not go beyond 7 years, so that is why the ED gets 60 days. Now if no one is arrested and only the property is attached, right, because if the property is from an ill-gotten money, then ED has to attach that property, and if no one is arrested and only the property is attached, then the prosecution complaint along with the attachment order is to be submitted before the adjudicating authority within 60 days, basically competent court, right. Now one of the most important aspects of this PMLA is the retrospective application. So that you need to remember from a exam perspective. So PMLA basically came in 2002, and it had this retrospective clause with respect to the year 2005. So what does this retrospective clause says? That if any ill-gotten property is acquired before the year 2005, if you are acquiring any ill-gotten property before the year 2005, when PMLA law was brought in and disposed of, please remember this word, means it has been disposed of before 2005, then there is no case under the PMLA. So there will be no retrospective application. But if the proceeds of crime were possessed before 2005 but kept in a cold storage, means it was somewhere hidden, right, it was kept hidden somewhere from the eyes of the enforcement agencies, and it was used to buy properties after 2005, then the person is liable to be prosecuted under PMLA. So this is the retrospective application under the PMLA. Now PMLA is also very significant because you will hear sometimes in news section 45, something that the Supreme Court in Vijay Mandal Chaudhary case, it's a 2022 judgment. This section 45 the Supreme Court upheld. Now what is this section 45, why it is very controversial? Because it lays down twin conditions of bail. With respect to ED, one thing that you will notice is getting bail is very difficult. Why it is difficult? Because of section 45. And what are these twin conditions of bail? So under the twin conditions of bail, it is the accused, the onus is on the accused to prove to the court that he was not guilty of laundering money. So condition 1 is the accused will prove to court that he is not guilty. In other situations, it is the prosecuting agency that has to prove. Here the accused has to prove to the court that he was not guilty. And the second is that he has to also assure the court that if he is granted bail, he will not come out and commit any offence, again with respect to the charges that he has been framed under. He will not try to destroy evidence, etc., etc. So he will not commit any offence after bail. So these twin conditions of bail, it makes very difficult for anyone to get bail under the PMLA system, the law, right? So this is why getting bail when ED is after you becomes very difficult for a person. This section 45 has been in news a lot. Vijay Mandal Chaudhary case, very recent, not very far, 2022. You understand that UPSC can take up such an issue. So you should just remember that. Now, why is this article very important per se? What is the other aspect that you should remember from polity and governance perspective? So federalism is under question. Why federalism is under question? Because Indian constitution, it follows a quasi-federal structure where there are clear demarcation of powers between center and government, and those demarcation of powers are given in the 7th schedule. Now law and order per se are the state's prerogative, right? Now ED is a central agency under the Ministry of Finance, and often it enters into state's jurisdiction without proper legal basis, and this challenges the principle of cooperative federalism. So what we call it as combative federalism, right? This is resulting in combative federalism. So investigative agencies coming down on opposition states or other states, right, and operating in their jurisdiction often leads to combating federalism, as we can see in this West Bengal versus Union case with respect to ED. So this politicization of institution, it leads to erosion of public trust in legal institutions. So that is a natural thing to happen. In this year also, with respect to TASMAC in Tamil Nadu, the Supreme Court had said that ED has become a very rogue institution, right? So in that particular matter, law and order, the Supreme Court clearly stated, was the prerogative of state government under the 7th schedule. Liquor, the matter was related to liquor. It is also subject under the states, under the state law list in the 7th schedule. So this leads to erosion of public trust, right? It leads to intimidation of political opposition, which basically weakens the democratic pluralism of India, because there is a clear division of power, a demarcation of power, and state government also derive their authority from the same constitution. So it weakens the democratic ethos and pluralism. It leads to paralysis in the state level governance. Obviously, it will lead to paralysis of state governance. Basically, officials, they fear legal consequences of their routine decisions, that any small issue and the central investigative agencies will be after you. So naturally that is going to paralyze the governance. So basically what all of this is doing, it is creating an unbalanced power structure where states cannot perform their constitutional duties freely, right? So this is the larger issue that the topic has brought forth, this issue has brought forth, this article is highlighting. So that you should remember from your polity aspect. You should know 7th schedule, what are the items under the state list, etc., right, and the broader impact. Okay, so let us move to the next topic. Okay, so moving on to this third topic, beyond economy, Iran stir reflects rage against the regime. Now, this is a very important piece from both prelims and mains perspective. Our focus here would be more from a prelims perspective, but I will take up certain of the issues that are important from a mains perspective also. So, what is the short summary of this issue that is going on? From December 28th, there have been runway inflation in Iran. Their currency has depreciated. So first, the protests were against the economic fallout in the state, and now naturally they have triggered widespread cry for a regime change, right? So the protest began on December 28 at Tehran's Grand Bazaar. What were the issues? Inflation above 52%, monthly food inflation nearly 7%, the Iranian rial at a record low 148 million per USD, right? Now it very quickly expanded to almost all provinces, and now the people are basically clashing with the security forces. There is a widespread cry for regime change, and some 36 protesters have been killed, right? So the government response so far has been the removal of subsidies on essential imports, cash and voucher transfers to the tune of $7 a month per person is what the government is giving. So that is a background. Whether the regime change will happen or not happen, that we have to wait and see. But here we are going to understand what has been the series of steps taken in the past that has led to this kind of a situation in Iran, right? And we are going to look at that region from a mapping perspective. It is very important from a mapping perspective, right? So let us proceed. So what is the background? Iran's nuclear program and the sanctions. So we have to understand Iran's nuclear program. So Iran's nuclear program was something that was at the center of the international concern since early 2000, and due to this fears of nuclear weaponization, the United Nations, United States, European Union, it started imposing layered sanction targeting Iran's oil exports. This was the initial sanctions that came on Iran by the United Nations, United States, European Union. Sanctions were on oil exports, banking and financial sector, shipping and insurance, access to global financial system, that is the SWIFT system, right? Now these sanctions started the key structural cause of Iran's long-term economic distress. Now despite these sanctions, Iran continued with its nuclear program. It continued to enrich uranium, right, and acquiring centrifuges. Now then came the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, the JCPOA 2015, right, where Barack Obama, the then president of the United States, was very a key person to move ahead with this. So basically it was signed between Iran and P5+1, P5 because these are the permanent 5, US, UK, France, Russia, China and Germany, that was the extra one, right. What was the objective? The objective was to limit Iran's uranium enrichment. So that was the immediate concern. Earlier sanctions did not work, so now they wanted to limit Iran's uranium enrichment through this agreement, to reduce the centrifuges and allow the IAEA inspections regularly to see whether Iran is secretly undertaking any nuclear weaponization, right. So in return the sanctions relief was given, especially on the oil exports and the banking. So after the JCPOA, Iran's oil exports rose because it has proven oil reserves. India was also a buyer of the cheap oil from Iran for a significant period of time. The inflation, it moderated temporarily. The foreign investment also, it increased marginally in Iran. Now fast forward, in 2018 when the president Donald Trump came into picture, he became the POTUS. Then what happened? He unilaterally withdrew US from the JCPOA, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, and he launched the maximum pressure campaign. The maximum pressure strategy basically was reimposition of US secondary sanctions and penalizing any third country from trading with Iran, right. So reimposition of US secondary sanctions on Iran, it was undertaken under the President Donald Trump, and any third country firms that are trading with Iran, they were also penalized, right, because of which India also stopped imports of oil from Iran, and our dependency on Russia increased post this. So what was the result? It led to the collapse of oil exports from Iran, sharp fall in foreign exchange reserves naturally, right, and it led to the depreciation of real, and it also led to runaway inflation in the country. So runaway inflation is a situation where inflation moves towards hyperinflation when the currency of the country is depreciating, losing its value, right. And something that is important from this that came in this piece was the snapback sanctions mechanism. So what is a snapback sanction? It is a provision under the UN Security Council Resolution 2231. So this resolution was endorsed, this was a resolution that endorsed the JCPOA. This resolution is not important, but you have to understand what is snapback. So basically it allows any JCPOA participant, the joint comprehensive plan of action. So we are talking about the P5 plus 1, right. So it allows any JCPOA participant to reimpose the pre-2015. So remember that after JCPOA, certain sanctions were lifted from Iran. It was eased, right. But post 2015 it was eased, but before that the sanctions were very aggressive on Iran. So it allows any participant to reimpose those pre-2015 UN sanctions if Iran was found non-compliant, right. And that is what US did. It imposed the snapback sanctions, and how it works: a participant stage alleges Iran's significant non-performance. It is basically non-compliant of the agreement, and it issues to the the issue goes to the UN Security Council. If the council fails to pass a resolution to continue sanctions relief within 30 days, all previous US sanctions automatically snap back. So that is, and there is no veto power used in a snapback sanction. China was a big votary against this snapback sanctions, but it could not use its veto power. So all previous US sanctions, they have automatically applied on Iran now, and together with this maximum pressure strategy, this snapback sanctions. So the current linkage from a GS2 and international relations perspective. So US and UN sanctions over Iran's nuclear program basically have restricted oil exports, reduced foreign exchange inflows, exacerbated the inflation. So runaway inflation is very high, currency is losing its value, right. Now Trump, after becoming president, he has renewed maximum pressure strategy, which has further worsened the crisis, and US president has publicly supported the protesters, giving regime a foreign conspiracy narrative, right. So this is something that is a recent development, where the President Donald Trump has also supported regime change, and it has said that any violent use against the peaceful protesters will lead to US getting into action in Iran, right. So we'll have to wait and see what happens in the news. But coming to this region from a mapping perspective, this is the map of Iran. We will look at some of the very key regions that are there, right. So Iran basically is a West Asian country located at a very strategic spot. If you look at the political system in Iran, why? Because it is in news also, let us just understand. So it is a combination of republican institutions and Islamic theocracy, right. So it is a very unique political system. After the 1979 Islamic Revolution, the real power in Iran, it basically rests with the supreme leader. At present, Khomeini is the supreme leader in Iran, and he is also supposed to pass on this position to someone else. So there is going to be a transition there also. Now this makes Iran a very key geopolitical and ideological actor in the Middle East. If you look at the location of Iran, it is located in southwestern Asia, acting as a bridge between Middle East, Central Asia and South Asia. And the strategic access to Persian Gulf and Strait of Hormuz is something that makes Iran strategically very important in this region. So if you look at the map of Iran, you will see this is Iran, this is the Persian Gulf, and this is the Strait of Hormuz. This connects the Gulf of Oman and the Arabian Sea. So you can see its strategic significance here on the map, right. Now neighboring countries, some of the neighboring countries that you will see with near Iran, those are Azerbaijan, Armenia, Turkmenistan, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Turkey, Iraq, right. So Iran is very important for from a strategic perspective for US, China, India, right. Now some of the important water bodies and straits that you will see near the map of Iran, that those are Caspian Sea, Persian Gulf, Strait of Hormuz, Gulf of Oman. Let us move to this map again. So Caspian Sea is somewhere towards the north, you will see, just near Turkmenistan, Azerbaijan, right. And Persian Gulf is here, Strait of Hormuz is this one, Gulf of Oman, there is, this connects to Arabian Sea. So very important sea lines of communication pass through this region, right. Now coming to the key geological and physical features that are located in Iran, that are also important from a mapping perspective. So the central Iranian plateau, which is basically this region. So this is the central Iranian plateau somewhere here, right. Now what are some of the geological features? So it is a vast arid elevated region which forms the core of Iran, and it is dominated by Dasht-e-Kavir and Dasht-e-Lut deserts, right. So these deserts are characterized by extremes of temperature, salt flats and sparse habitation. So if you look at the physical map of Iran, you will see the Dasht-e-Lut and Dasht-e-Kavir desert somewhere around here, right. You will have to look at a physical map of Iran for that. Then some of the important mountain ranges is the Zagros mountains, a long northwestern southeast mountain system on the western Iran, geologically young and tectonically very active. It is rich in hydrocarbons, forming a natural barrier between the plateau and the Mesopotamian plains. So the Zagros is somewhere located here, right. Now coming to next important mountain, it is the Elbrus mountain. Somewhere you will find the Elbrus mountain somewhere here south of the Caspian Sea, right. The Elbrus mountain is basically harboring the Mount Damavand, Iran's highest peak, right. So that is important from a mapping perspective. Some of the important rivers, most of the rivers in Iran are seasonal in nature, but there is Karun river in the southwestern part. It is the only fully navigable river and crucial source of irrigation and hydroelectric power in Iran. So if you look at the physical map of Iran, you will find the Karun river flowing somewhere here and emptying in the Persian Gulf, right. So from a prelims mapping perspective, this is a very important topic, right. Since this issue is in news, all the earlier incidents like JCPOA, etc., the snapback sanctions, the maximum pressure strategy, etc., come into focus and are very important from prelims perspective. So this is it. Let us move to the next topic. Okay, so moving in to the next important topic for today, which is very important from art and culture perspective. So return of the Buddha's relics. So this talks about how the Piprahwa gems came back home. So what happened in April 2005, basically the culture ministry, it received basically a dossier that some 349 gems excavated in 1898 along with the relics of Buddha were to be auctioned. These were excavated from Piprahwa in Uttar Pradesh, were said to be auctioned in the Hong Kong, right. Now that triggered a trail and it led to series of incidents, and finally those relics have arrived to India, right. So this Piprahwa gems, the sacred relics which were associated with Buddha, have finally returned home because the Indian government was able to pursue many diplomatic, legal and other kinds of pressures on Hong Kong, particularly the owner, to sell these to India. So finally in India also we have been able, one Indian philanthropist, Mr. Firoz Shah Godrej, he acquired these relics on behalf of the government, and finally these relics are with the Indian government. Now we will understand this from a cultural perspective and also the legal terminology, some of the conventions that are associated with this incident. So let us proceed first. What is important here is Piprahwa. First you need to know where is Piprahwa. So it is an important Buddhist archaeological site. It is located in Siddharthnagar district of Uttar Pradesh, right. So it is widely identified with ancient Kapilavastu, to which Buddha belonged, right, which was the capital of the Shakya clan. So Gautam Buddha basically belonged to this Shakya clan, and it was the capital of Shakya clan, this ancient Kapilavastu. So Kapilavastu was a place where Buddha spent his early life. His clan Shakyas, they preserved his relics after his death, right. So Piprahwa is that place which is directly connected to the Mahaparinirvana of the Buddha. So what is Mahaparinirvana? So basically at the age of 80, when Buddha passed away, he attained moksha, right, and he was liberated from this cycle of rebirth. So that is called Mahaparinirvana, right. So this is what you need to know about Piprahwa. So what is the background discovery of these relics in 1898? So in 1898, William Claxton Pepe, which is again not very important from prelims perspective, I am just giving you a context. So he was a British estate manager. He excavated a stupa mound at Piprahwa. So what are the discoveries he made? He found an 18-foot deep shaft, a sandstone coffer, and 5 reliquary urns, basically caskets, right. So all these things inside the caskets were bone fragments, which is Buddha's remains, which are very sacred for Buddhists, right, not to be sold. Gold sheets, crystal containers and soapstone vessels, along with some nearly 1800 gemstones, which included pearls, rubies, sapphire, topaz, right, all connected to Buddha. So let us understand this piece. So in one of the caskets there was a Brahmi inscription, right, one of the reliquary caskets, there was an inscription in Brahmi script which basically said the relics belong to Buddha and were deposited by the Sakya clan. Now this makes it archaeologically and historically very important, because this directly proves that Buddha was an ancient historical person. So this is a direct proof of that, right. They are among the earliest authenticated remains of Buddha, right. This inscription directly show that these are amongst the earliest authenticated remains of the Buddha. They confirm the role of Shakya clan in preserving Buddha's relics, and also they strengthen India's position as spiritual homeland of Buddhism. So therefore the Piprahwa inscriptions, these are very important from a historical perspective. They are a historical source for early Buddhism, right. Now what is the Buddhist concept of relics? So let us just delve into that a little bit. So in Buddhism, relics are sacred and not objects of trade. So that you should be very clear with. So the physical remains of Buddha are called Sarira Dhatu. So there are 3 types of relics in Buddhism. So first is the Sarira Dhatu, which are the physical remains, bones, ashes, teeth, etc. of Lord Gautama Buddha. The Paribhoga, the objects used by Buddha, are the second types of relics in Buddhism. The Uddesikas, the symbolic representations, are the third types of relics in Buddhism, right. So this Piprahwa relics, these are of the highest level. They are Sarira Dhatu, right, direct physical remains of Gautama Buddha, the highest and the most sacred category. So they have, so they are meant for veneration inside stupas, and definitely not for sale or private ownership, right. Now here, why gems were found here? So the gemstones found in Piprahwa, I just last slide we discussed some 1800 gems were found, right, topaz, rubies, many other things. So these are offerings made to the Buddha's relics. It were placed in the stupa during the enshrinement, and it is part of the Buddhist ritual practice. So therefore they are religious objects and not jewelry or art objects, right. And all of this is very important to understand the UN convention, so that is why I am telling this, right. Moving on, so in 1898 the discovery was made. Most relics were placed in the Indian Museum of Kolkata, right. Now as per the colonial rules, this William Thomas Pepe, he was allowed to keep 1/5 of the finds under the then existing colonial rules. right. So he basically carried some 349 gems along with Buddha's relics, etc. Right. So these relics then were passed down through the Pepe family and remained outside India for more than 125 years, and in 2025, so they were being auctioned. So 349 Piprahwa gems were put up for auction in Hong Kong by this great grandson of William Pepe, right. And this caused alarm because Buddha's relics were being treated as a commodity, as we have discussed. So these relics are of the highest category in their sacredness, and they were being treated as commodity. They could have gone to another country permanently, right. It violated the spirit of UNESCO's 1970 Convention on Cultural Property. So we will now understand this UNESCO's 1970 convention, because this is what India used along with other agencies like Financial Intelligence Unit, diplomatic pressure on Hong Kong, since Pepe was US national, UK national. So they also discussed this with the UK government, and that acted as a pressure. So India invoked the UNESCO Convention on means of prohibiting and preventing illicit import, export and transfer of ownership of cultural property. So this convention, India is a ratified signatory, and what does this convention cover? It covers archaeological objects, antiques, objects of religious importance, right. So this convention is something that is very important from prelims perspective along with Piprahwa. So and what are the kinds of relics in Buddhism? So these cover archaeological objects, antiques and objects of religious importance, right. Now coming to this Piprahwa relics, they qualify as archaeological property, right. They are sacred religious objects and heritage of the country of origin, India, right. Country of origin here is India, so they are definitely a heritage. Now what was India's argument? That even though the relics left India before independence, their commercial sale violates the convention spirit, because sacred relics cannot be treated as private property. So this gave India moral and diplomatic leverage, right, even though the strict legal enforceability was very weak in this case, because these relics had gone outside the country before India got independence, before this treaty came into existence, right. So this is a very important piece from art and culture perspective, and this convention is very important, right. So this is it. Let us move to the next topic. Okay, so moving on to the last article of the day. So Somaliland is no longer a diplomatic endnote. So this is a very important article that has featured regarding the recent recognition of Israel of Somaliland. This has transformed the entire territory from a regional anomaly to a focal point of great power struggle. Now this article basically asserts that this legal recognition by Israel, it directly threatens China's one China policy, right. China has been developing military logistics in Djibouti. So this Somaliland is just neighboring state to Djibouti, and if Israel gains access to some of the ports in Somaliland, so that will directly threaten China's hegemony in the region. China has invested immensely in Africa. So this article is both important from prelims perspective and mains perspective, but we are going to look at this from a very prelims perspective, right. So coming to what is the issue? So the issue is that in December 2025, Israel has recognized Somaliland as an independent. Israel has recognized Somaliland as an independent sovereign state. Now this geopolitically is very significant, because Somaliland so far was a part of Somalia in the international law. So UN has considered Somaliland to be part of Somalia, right. So it has functioned de facto independent state since 1991, but the legal state is that it is part of Somalia so far, right. Now Israel's recognition, this breaks the 30-year-old consensus on this matter, right, of not recognizing Somaliland. So there was a consensus. Now this has broken that consensus. So this has brought this region into a great power flashpoint, and now we are going to look at this region both from a mapping perspective, strategic perspective, and how and what are the concerns of China, that we are going to understand. So first about Somaliland. If you look at Somaliland, it is located in the Horn of Africa. This is the Horn of Africa, right, on the Gulf of Aden. its legal status, it is considered part of Somalia by UN. The capital is Hargeisa, so the capital city is here. The political system here, multi-party democracy, right? Regular elections, competitive elections happen, and security wise it is more stable compared to Somalia. Now if you look at why this region is very important, why Israel recognized Somaliland, what was the objective? So Israel's interest here is more of geostrategic, not ideological. Why Somaliland lies very next to the Bab el-Mandeb Strait? It is the gateway between Red Sea and the Indian Ocean. So if you look at the map, this is the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, this is the Red Sea, and here we have the Gulf of Aden, which connects to the Indian Ocean. So this is a very important choke point. This waterway is very crucial for global oil shipments, Israel-Asia trade, Western naval movement. So by recognizing Somaliland, basically Israel gains a diplomatic leverage, because now if it gets access to a port, if it gets a potential port there, so it will be able to set up intelligence and naval access, right? And basically it will also achieve a friendly state near a critical maritime choke point. So that is the objective of Israel. It is a very important region on the Horn of Africa. Now why is China feeling threatened? There are multiple reasons. First is triple strategic dilemma. One is the one China principle. So China considers Taiwan inseparable from China. So that is the one China policy of policy by the People's Republic of China, that Taiwan is inseparable from China. What Taiwan has done, Taiwan basically has established ties with Somaliland in 2020, and it has also opened representative offices in Hargeisa. So this recognition of Somaliland by Israel basically puts focus back on the issue of Taiwan, right? So that is something that is going to happen here. Now unlike other regions, Ladakh, Xinjiang, where there are legal disputes, Somaliland de facto has been independent state for 30 years now, right? It is more stable compared to Somalia. It has currency, it has its own army. There are disputes with respect to border, but it cannot be just brushed aside like other regional issues, right? So that is why it is a headache for China, and directly going to question the one China principle. Legal recognition of Taiwan is coming to picture. Now the second issue is the Red Sea and maritime Silk Road. So if you look at Chinese investments in Africa, Africa is going to be a huge market for any developed nation, right? And therefore Chinese investments in Africa have increased multifold. Now China depends heavily again on this Bab el-Mandeb Strait, this Red Sea and the Suez route, and China has developed its military base in Djibouti 2017 to protect basically its shipping from piracy, energy imports that go through this region, and the BRI sea routes. So the maritime Silk Road under the BRI that China has constructed in this region. So it wants to protect all that, and therefore it has its military base in Djibouti. If you look at the location of Djibouti, you will see it is very close to Somaliland, right? So this has been the base of China so far. If Israel gets support, that directly brings US into picture, right? UAE already is quietly supporting this formal recognition, right? And other Western partners may follow through. So this is something that is concerning China, right? So this news has been important from this perspective. Majorly in prelims you will have to focus on the mapping issue. You can be asked this question from a mapping perspective. They can ask you a question on some historical perspective also, maybe a statement. So some history that is there in this article you should be noting down, right? So that is it in this today's DNA session. We will be back with another episode very soon. Thank you for watching.